I'm Xavier.
And I'm Saad.
And we're hosting today's show of the Bulldog Buzz, where we captured the latest news around the city of Green. This Bulldog Buzz is brought to you by the Bulldog Beat, a group of Green students representing grades 6 through 12.
This unique program designed to train students to become backpack reporters, news anchors, video technicians, gives kids the opportunity to learn from each other, to write news stories, conduct on-camera interviews, edit, shoot, and direct programs that will air on our GCTV Channel 16.
And we're here today to bring you the information our community is buzzing about.
In 1939, the first class of John Kleckner School graduated, leaving behind a capsule of memories for generations to come. Leading up to the opening of the time capsule, the Bulldog Beat is hosting a 3-segment episode, and for the first segment, we're going to be discussing the history behind 1939.
As of 2016, the Green Historical Society's mission is to bring together people who are interested in history, and especially in the history of Green, Ohio. And to talk more about the history behind 1939, I would like to welcome to the show the Green Historical Society Secretary and our special guest, Stacy Schweikert. Stacy, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, let's just start off. What do you think is going to be in this time capsule?
Well, I'm hoping that there'll be some newspaper articles, maybe magazine articles. In the 30s, it was very popular to have autographs and collect autographs, so maybe we'll have some autographs from the students at the school, possibly some famous autographs as well. That would be nice. And the school, also the 1939 edition was a WPA, a Public Works project. So I am hoping that maybe there'll be some information about that Public Works project or the administrators who put it together. Sometimes there's also architectural information. Sometimes it was the builder who did the time capsule. So there might be information about the engineers, architects, and hopefully the WPA project itself, because we had a lot of public works projects in Green, but we don't have a lot of documentation about them.
So you were saying some famous autographs.
Yes.
How much do you think that might cost? Like if we were to sell
Oh, what would it be worth?
Yeah.
Oh, it would depend on the autograph, but there was a housing project in Toledo that had a 1939 time capsule from another WPA Works project, and they had an autograph of FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the time capsule. So, you know, maybe we can hope for that.
What would the Green officials do if we found something like this?
Oh,
inside the box?
Well, there'd be more interest in the Historical Society, right?
Yeah.
Could be a good thing.
Well, since this was way back in the 1930s, what type of things might there be different from like the things from 2016?
Sure. Well, I think back then the students would have carried a little different supplies. Yeah. Some would be the same: pencils, crayons, your colored pencils. They wouldn't have had markers, not in 1939. They might have had watercolors. Okay. In fact, getting ready to see you guys today, I found an ad from 1939 for school supplies, and it was surprising the big difference of the cost. They had 6 pencils for 5 cents, 50 sheets of notebook paper for 4 cents. And I thought something that was interesting, the older students, because these are expensive, so the younger kids probably wouldn't have gotten these, but for 98 cents, you could get a briefcase to carry your books and supplies to school.
Much cheaper than today.
Much cheaper than today, but pretty expensive back in the day. So I don't know how many students would have actually been able to afford a briefcase like that. And for 20 cents, you could get a metal lunchbox. And a plain metal industrial-looking lunchbox. That would have been, you know,
so like no designs.
That was a luxury.
Like Sesame Street, like none of that.
No, I don't think they did anything like that.
Nowadays, that would be like more than $2–3.
Yes, yeah, pretty easily. Yeah.
Can you tell me more like about the styles that might have been different than now?
So in 1939. We are trying to get out of the Great Depression, right? Yeah. And in many places, the Depression is kind of winding down. Yeah. Here in Green, We were still performing works projects. The Depression was still, playing out. But you wouldn't have known that from the styles. The students of the day would have dressed what we would have considered very glamorous by today's standards. The gals would have had very nice dresses. Suits were popular. I found an article that talked about how tailored suits for girls, particularly high school girls, were very popular. And also hats. Hats were starting to go back out of fashion. But, not very many students today do you see walking down the halls of Green High School in full suits and hats. Yeah,
I was actually doing some research on that, and they had, I think they're called berets or something. Like
a beret? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that type of hat.
Yep. Yes.
Very popular.
Did they also wear top hats?
No, I don't think they were as popular for boys, and it would have been more like caps.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been a top hat style, more like a cap. Yeah.
Okay.
So we know that Kleckner, I remember there was a fire.
Yes.
And it's gone through many different changes.
Absolutely.
Can you just describe for us, what over the years, how all the different changes that Kleckner has been through?
Absolutely. Well, we know that there was an earlier school on or near that site, but the first part of the building that we know and have good pictures of, some of the pictures up here are on the counter, was in 1903. And in 1903, it was built as a 4-room schoolhouse. And this was to house their first consolidated high school grades. And high school back then wasn't exactly like it was today. It was more like a 3-year program. It was very early. The first class was in 1902, the year before the building that we all know and recognize was built. Then it was expanded again in 1913. They built an additional 4 rooms, so now it was an 8-room schoolhouse. And now the high school is kind of in the format that we would recognize it today, a 4-year program, grades 9 through 12. There were 2 more additions, a 1927 edition, and then in 1927 edition, the school became more like what you guys would recognize like a schoolhouse that you have today. Yeah. They added a gymnasium. Now the gym didn't have bleachers yet, but they had a nice gymnasium. I think there might have been some plumbing in the school in 27, but I'm not certain. Conflicting reports. Some people say 1939 was the first indoor plumbing. So now the 1939 edition is built, and it's built as a new high school. So every time they build an addition, similar to now, right? In the last 30 years, if you look at Green's history, we build a new high school, and then the younger grades move on down to what used to be the high school. They did the same thing back then. So 1939, that addition was built to be the new high school. And that was part of the Federal Emergency Administration Public Works Project. And let's see, at that time they expanded the gymnasium. So they expanded the gym into the form that it was in just recently when the school closed in 2011.
So quick question there, sorry to interrupt.
No.
So when you're saying gymnasium, I know now our gymnasium has basketball hoops. What did they use the gymnasium for back then?
The same thing.
The same thing?
They would have had a nice wood floor. Now I believe in the 39 edition is when the wood floor was redone, because again the gym was expanded and made a little larger. The back wall was bumped out for the bleachers and made it more like a combination gymnasium and an auditorium, right? They had a stage on one side, they had the wood floor to play basketball and sports, and then they had a bleacher section.
Was Kleckner one of the only schools in that area that had these things?
Yes, this would have been the only school in Green Township, which is all of the city of Green today, that had a gymnasium and bleachers and things. Now, I believe before the gym was built in 1927, the students at the Greensburg School were able to use the Grange halls. We had 2 different Grange halls, and I think they allowed them to use their stage and auditorium, but it was a much smaller
Now, what
venue.
are Grange halls?
Sorry. Okay. Well, a Grange hall, it was a club. It was like a private organization, and they would have basically, I guess you would call it like a clubhouse, like a building that they met in, and it usually had a stage. They could do ceremonies. They could have meetings, and the Grange hall. Grange was an organization that in every rural area you had at least one Grange. Most towns the size of Greensburg, you would have had maybe a couple Grange halls that competed for members. But you could go together, you could get discounts on your insurance for your farm. And you'd have other benefits that you would need living in a rural community. And it was just a way to socialize and get together too.
So they had farmers insurance back then?
Oh yes, yes, very important.
So back to the time capsule. What do you think the City of Green should do with the things they find in this capsule?
Well, we work closely with the City of Green. First, we like to preserve artifacts like this that are important to our history, but another one of our missions is to also share these artifacts and to make sure that people are able, not just to know that they exist, but to also get to see them. Yes. And we have many artifacts in our collection we actually let people touch and hold and see. These will be a little bit more valuable and definitely sentimental, so I don't know that there'll be a lot of direct contact with these artifacts, but we definitely like to have them displayed so everybody can see their content and just get a little better appreciation of what was here before all of us.
Is there a special museum or something like that where you keep all your artifacts of Green?
No, there's not, but we have nice facilities inside the Central Administration Building to display artifacts. There's also nice facilities here at the high school. There's many places, many public venues that actually I think probably get more traffic and more visitors than even if we had a museum.
Yeah.
So there's definitely ways we can make these available to the public.
So you were saying about the museum, you like to have them like in different places where people can see. And you're saying for this one, you don't want people touching it. How like valuable do you think the stuff inside this would be? Like, do you think if we like touched it, it would like disintegrate or? Oh,
I don't think so. I think the things that have survived in here, assuming that this capsule hasn't taken on any moisture, because if it's taken on moisture, then things could be damaged or destroyed. But if it hasn't, I think the things will be in good shape. The papers may be brittle, and we have gloves here today, so we'll all be very careful when it comes time to open and handle the documents, and you know, we'll just take those precautions, but you should be able to touch them and open them, and we'll see what we find.
Okay.
The box was copper. It looks like it's blackened out a little bit, and
yeah, I think that's pretty typical. I think that's what we would expect. And encased in the stone, cornerstone the way it was, I think it was probably fairly well protected. And the other time capsules from this time period, they've survived very well. And the contents have been in good shape. So we're very hopeful that whatever's in there should be in good enough shape we can see it, touch it today, and not cause any damage.
We were surprised to see that there was no latches or anything to close it. That's what,
That does seem odd, but I guess maybe the way that it was in the stone cornerstone, maybe that just kind of kept it tight together. Let's hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what did Kleckner mean to you?
Oh, well, I have to admit, I'm very involved in the Historical Society here, but I did not attend Kleckner School. I was very excited for my children to go there, but it closed before they missed it too. So Kleckner, I think what it's important to take from Kleckner is if you look at the 100 years of Kleckner Elementary, it really represents the progress in this area, the progress of Green. You can look at the additions that were built, and it directly mirrors what's going on in our community. Our schools are really, they're our connection to the kids that we raise here and the kids that leave here, and some come back. Some don't come back, but they still have that tie to the community. So the school is very important to everyone who attended. And I really think for those of us who didn't get the opportunity to attend, you can still look at Kleckner and look at its history, and you can see what's going on in rural America. Yeah. And in particular, our community now. You know, there's a lot of growth in Green, there's a lot of changes. People are always a little bit hesitant about change, but if you look at our history, Green has always been changing. There's always been evolution. We've always, thank goodness, had more students wanting to come to Green, and that's a great thing.
And I know Kleckner has been around for like over 100 years now. I forget exact number, but so your kids didn't get to go to the school. No. So can you just describe what some of the reasons why they shut down Kleckner?
Oh, sure. Well, I think I think the school had some issues that were going to be very expensive. There were maintenance costs that were very high. Older buildings are wonderful buildings. Yeah. I live in a historic home. Obviously, at the Historical Society, we love our historic buildings. But they are expensive to maintain. And I think Kleckner was at an age where it had some large projects that needed to be done, and they probably weren't cost effective for the school system. And the school system, you know, we're about providing you all a great education, not necessarily always preserving history if that's too expensive.
Yeah.
Preservation is best done when it makes financial sense.
How much did the Kleckner school, when it was torn down, how much did that affect the other schools around? Because I know how the grades had to move to other schools.
Sure. Well, I think it did have an effect, but I think my kids are part of those generation of students who are now at the other schools. And I think the other schools have adapted, and I think everything is going pretty smooth. So I think that's worked out okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we would also like to thank you for joining us today. We deeply appreciate your support in watching the Bulldog Beat on the Bulldog Buzz.
The Green Historical Society contributes services to help discover and collect any material which may help establish or illustrate the history of the city of Greene. They believe that understanding the history of our community gives us a better understanding of our nation and our state and promotes a better appreciation for our American heritage.
And this concludes our first segment of the Bulldog Beat for the opening of the time capsule. For more information on the Green Historical Society and how you can take part in the history of Greene, visit www.greenhistoricalsociety.com.
Next up is Ella and Sarah to talk more about Kleckner.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Ella.
And welcome back to the Bulldog Buzz. Thank you, Sada and Xavier, for all the useful information.
Kleckner Elementary was open for 112 years, so many students went through the building. In this segment of the show, we will be talking about what Kleckner was like in its earlier days. Today we have with us Julie McMahan. Hi, Julie. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, girls. I'm proud of both of you, and I'm happy to fill in on this segment for you. I know we've kind of talked to several different people in the last few days about Kleckner, so it's really exciting to be here with you.
Yeah, we have a lot of different information.
We do. Where should we start?
Well, so what we did is we went around and we asked people questions instead of just interviewing one person, because we figured that since so many people went to Kleckner, it'd be good to have multiple answers.
A lot of people would want to talk about
That's a great idea, and I know as I heard you guys talking out there, and you were doing a wonderful job, you know, we came across students and we came across parents, we came across people who have lived next to Kleckner for years and years and years, so it's really neat to kind of put it all together then in this format. Great, who are we starting with?
So the first question that we asked was, Kleckner was home to many different students, and there were a lot of different grades over the time. So like when they attended Kleckner, what grades were in the school?
That's a great question, and I think we heard a little bit about that from Sod and Xavier when Stacy was on. And I know that for a long time it was like a K through 12 building, and then it became, oh my gosh, I think K through 8, and then your intermediate school is became the high school then at one time. I'm not gonna say the date because then I'll say it wrong. So you know, Kleckner has been so many different things to so many people, and I think that's what makes it so exciting when we're talking to some of the people.
Oh yeah. We have grades where it was 2 through 4, second through 4th, and 3rd through 4th. It was a high school at one point.
And I know we have talked to Allison Rickman, right? Yes. And I think she was there in grades 2 through 4, and then we had Miranda and Addie Morrow was there 3 for 4, and then Dorothy Brown, she was there from kindergarten to 8th grade, and I can't remember the years, but I think it was a while back.
I think she graduated in 1966.
Yeah, so she was there K through 8, yeah.
So the second question we asked people was, did they have a favorite time during their Kleckner school day? We got a lot of answers with lunch and recess. People said that the cafeteria food.
That hasn't really changed much today, right?
Yeah.
So lunch and recess seems to be the most popular thing even now.
People said that the cafeteria food was really good, and at recess they would always go back in the pine trees.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And I know with that lunch and recess, I know you girls, we were at Mrs. Torok's house, and we were talking to her for a long time. And actually, Mrs. Torok's daughter had shared with me that they actually were able to leave Kleckner and go home for lunch and then come back. So that's a little different than it is now too. Yeah.
Can't do that today.
Mm-hmm. I know in our Kleckner memory book, let's talk about that for a minute. So the Kleckner memory book, that we began collecting all sorts of memories when people picked up their bricks.
Yes.
And so what were some of the favorite ones that you picked out of there?
Brooke Foster, she said that her favorite memory was, I fell off the monkey bars on the playground and chipped my front tooth in 2002.
So that was kind of recent, but that is a memory for sure, right?
Oh, yeah.
What else you got in there?
We have, let's see. The best memory is the fair and getting my first kiss on the playground.
And you know, and we're going to remind people who are watching this later at home that we are doing this as a studio audience. So if they hear chuckling, it's okay. So what was? Let's talk more about that playground. What did we learn from the book?
Well, we learned that there were a lot of memories about the pine trees.
Yes, and I'm hearing some rumblings in the audience already. And what did we hear on more than one occasion from people today and also in the book that those pine trees were famous for?
The pine trees were famous for going back and kissing girls.
And watching funerals.
And watching funerals, right. We learned that too. And I know one of the other things that Mrs. Torok had said was, and remember her house is right next to Kleckner and she lived there for so long, and so she could remember kids playing hooky, skipping school, and actually hiding out in the cemetery so they couldn't be found. So those pine trees had a lot of memories for a lot of people. I thought it was great too when we said, what is your favorite memory of Kleckner? Hiding in the pine trees and kissing girls. Ooh, but that's such a great part of the history of it.
And at one point, I think Mrs. Torok talked about wanting to put a fence up
Yeah.
to stop that from happening.
Well, I think it was more so the kids would stay in school.
Yeah.
Is what they wanted to do. And another thing we learned from her is that back in the day, they had a band, right? We know they had a band, but they didn't have a field like they have now. So the band would march down Thursby Road as their practice spot, and the Toroks were upset sometimes about that because that big bass drum would upset their cows, and the cows were milking cows, so that didn't work out too well.
Right.
I love that. I have this vision of the band. I think we should do that someday. We need our Green High School Marching Bulldog band to march down Thursby Road for maybe like homecoming or something. Ooh, we may have an idea coming from Kleckner history.
We also heard a lot about the Kleckner parades that would happen.
Yeah.
We heard that there was like a Halloween parade where they would dress up in their costumes and go around the school.
And I know Mr. Shavity, I think that's a name a lot of people will recognize. And he was only principal, I think, what did he tell us, for a year and a half. And one of his favorite memories as an administrator was he challenged his students to a reading marathon, I think it was. And what happened?
Well, the thing was, if all the students finished what they would do for the reading marathon, that he would dress up as a clown, sit on top of the roof in a rocking chair, and read a book to all the students down below.
And he did that.
He did.
And what happened?
All the kids started chanting, jump, jump, jump.
And Mr. Shavity told us never again did he dress up as a clown. That didn't work out so well.
No.
And what I think you girls have, do you have the handbook?
Yep, it's right here.
So we have a handbook, right? And what year is that?
It's from 1939.
And Sarah, why don't you open that up with the schedule? And we actually were looking at this a couple nights ago when we were looking. And what are some of the different classes that they had at Kleckner? And again, this is 1939, right? This is the 1939 student handbook. What do we got in there?
There's Girl Reserves.
Girl Reserves. And what did we decide that was? Actually, we looked it up, didn't we? We had to look this up.
We decided it was almost like a Girl Scouts sort of thing.
And then the High Y Boy Patrol was almost like a Boy Scouts, we believe.
Okay. And there were some ones that aren't so prevalent now that I think they should bring back, such as typing, typing was there even back in 1939. Now it'd be a little different now, but
Yeah.
with the old typewriters. What else was in there?
There was home ec.
That should be brought back.
There was Latin, history, study hall, geometry, journalism.
Well, we like that.
And there was also, let's see, bookkeeping.
All right, see, so a lot of those good
Would that
skills.
have been like a library, sort of?
Bookkeeping was probably like an accounting, like an early of keeping your books or balancing your checking account and, you know, those kind of things. I bet that's what that was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So another question that we asked people passing by was their most memorable memory
Yeah.
of Kleckner. And we got a lot of responses about the playground. And we also got a lot of responses about people talking about Mr. Stern, making them do the duck walk every time they ran in the hallways.
And Mr. Stern, and that I don't actually know Mr. Stern, so that's really neat.
Yeah.
And Caroline Campbell said that her favorite memory was when Mrs. Moretz and Mr. Wolf had like a Christmas party, and all the kids went to school in their pajamas, and they watched the Polar Express, and they all got surprised with hot chocolate.
Aw, see, and I think we do stuff like that even now too, so that's wonderful. And I know we talked a little bit briefly before we started talking here with our studio audience about the fire of 1945, and I know that was in our memory book a couple different times where kids and students and people going by remember books being thrown out of the second and third floor, and as Mr. Courtney had told us that the fire actually started in the basement, and so it kind of worked its way up, and so that was really a vivid, I can't even imagine, you know, your school burning and beloved. So it was great going back down memory lane and visiting with Mrs. Torek and some of our other folks here in the community that really dearly loved and cherished Kleckner, and I hope we can preserve that memory for them.
So we also heard that when Kleckner was being torn down, a lot of people went to see it, and they went and got a brick, and that's where they could write in the memory book.
Yep, exactly. And we do have a few bricks left, actually. We spent a couple days, again, really trying to preserve the memory. And I love that when all the people came out, and just the idea of putting their memory in this book tells me how important that school was. So again, we want to make sure we keep that alive. And so we do have a few more bricks left, so maybe we can get those out to some special people. Maybe some people that shared their memories with us, we can give them a brick. That would be awesome. All right. Good? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me and letting me share with you. And it was fun for me, you know, seeing Kleckner there for so many years and being with the school when we went through the whole process of it coming down. I'm just so glad we're able to do this now. And girls, thank you. Thanks for sharing the time with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming with us.
Yeah.
Now that we know what school was like for students at Kleckner, we have a better understanding of what might be in the time capsule. And that concludes this segment.
If you have any questions about the show, please contact Julie McMahan at mcmahonjulie@greenlocalschools.org. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Ella.
And stay tuned to see the grand opening of the Kleckner Time Capsule with Rachel and Caroline.
Welcome back to the Bulldog Buzz.
I'm Caroline.
And I'm Rachel. And today we have 3 special segments of live shows dedicated to the opening of the Kleckner Time Capsule.
That's right. Here at the Celebration of Education, we have a live studio audience and interviews just for the occasion. As you said, Rachel, we have 3 segments with different hosts and new guests.
During this last segment, we will finally be opening the Kleckner Time Capsule.
But before we open the time capsule, we will be interviewing Julie McMahan, who has stepped in for us today. Our guest archaeologist could not be here, so we're very excited to have her.
Aw, thanks, girls.
Thank you.
I'm actually super excited about this, and I don't know what to expect, but we've got our gloves and we're ready.
I know.
And so I do want to say we're very sorry our guest archaeologist could not be here. It was a very last minute, so I'm happy to help you out and we can do this together.
Yes, for
All
sure.
right. So why don't we start with looking at what some of the guesses are of what could be in the time capsule.
All right, so very brief, we have a brick. And I'm not sure Britt could fit in this, but it's a good guess. You want to read one?
Sure. So this person thinks it's a book or a letter.
Which, if you shake it, we have done that quite a bit because we're so excited to find out what's in it. It sounds like there could be some paper or something in there, but I don't know.
And I know we've heard from a couple different people who have had relatives that they believe were in that class, that we think that there's something from every student from the class of 1939. And so one of the reasons we have the gloves, even though we think it's been protected, and we've kind of talked about what we think it's made of, I think it looks like an old copier ammunition box, but that's just kind of what my guess looks like. And when we did pull it out from the cornerstone, it was completely intact. And so maybe with our studio audience, after we do this, we'll turn our cornerstone around so people can see how it was inserted right in there. So let's take one more guess out of there and see what we got.
This person says they think there would be a book, a record, or a toy plane. So
that could be.
That could be. Honestly, we have no idea what's in here. So
well, I've asked some of the administrators too, just because this has been such a hot topic. You girls know for the past few months since I've had it, and we were all talking about what are we going to do with it, and I said let's do something at Celebration of Education, and I thought it would be the perfect plan for the Bulldog Beat. So up until this time, Mr. Miller, our superintendent, who is a huge Green Bay Packer fan, is secretly hoping that there is the one and only missing Green Bay Packer football card in there that could be worth millions. So if there is, we may have to really see what we're going to do about that and see. I know. That may not have to go on display. We may have to see what we do about that.
We get our hands on it first, so he can wait.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you girls think is in it?
I think that there is maybe an old lunch menu or a schedule. I would hope that there would be, just to give us more information about what it was like back then to go to the school.
Rachel, what do you think?
I honestly really don't have any idea, but I think that the lunch menu would make sense.
That would be cool, and I know we kind of talked about it in a couple of our groups, you know, when we met for Bulldog Beat, and I think that was something that came up. Somebody too had said it'd be really neat if there was some sort of a weather chart or something like that, almost like an old farmer's almanac in there, so we could really see, is the weather that much different from now or then? And it's just exciting to see if we can tie this all in together with some of the people we talked about from our last segment and see what's in that. Okay, why don't you move that fishbowl aside? And our archaeologist did recommend, and so did Stacy Swikert from the Historical Society, recommended we open these with glove just because we're not sure of what's going to happen. So let's move the paper away and we'll pull that. And girls, go ahead and be very careful.
Together.
And, okay, everyone, here it goes. Oh my gosh, I'm really excited. Okay.
All right, ready?
Yep. Let's open it.
Oh.
One thing at a time. Okay, careful. Looks like a newspaper.
A newspaper. I'm trying to get a date here.
Okay, let's flip it over.
March 27th, 1939, The Pioneer.
The Pioneer.
Greensburg, Ohio. Wow.
You know what? And we will leave that up here then. Can you unfold it? Go ahead. That is in really good condition.
I know.
So I'm going to invite the studio audience when we're all finished here to come up because it is an amazing, amazing condition. All right, so we'll have to look at some of the articles. Look how small the newsprint is.
Oh, I know.
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like I want to read Greensburg Champions football, something on there. So read us one of the headlines.
Right here it says the senior class plans the all-school dance on April 15th. Students only.
Students only.
The band and orchestra are planning to play at Kent.
What's some of the ads on the back? See if we recognize any names. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how great condition that is.
The Buckeye Cycle Company. C.W. Bridenthal for Ford Sales and Service. Window Conditioning. The Ramsey Lumber Company and see our full line of Christmas toys.
Well, there you go. I love it.
This is awesome.
That is awesome.
All right, so
Oh my
that's the
gosh,
first
it's
one.
in such great shape.
Oh, this is what you said. Greensburg ties Wayne champions, 13-13. Score rates Greensburg High School even with Dalton squad.
All right, there we go.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Okay, so far so good.
All right, Rach.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I can't read.
Oh my gosh, look at all that. Oh my gosh. I'm excited for our
Do you wanna
studio
try
audience
one?
to see all this too.
If you can, that one looks like it's.
All right. So what we have, everybody, is
Looks like signatures.
it looks like signatures. All right, I have to get my glasses on. I wasn't expecting this. So, all right.
Let me see one.
It says Green Township Schools, Alan Cutter, I hope I'm saying that right, superintendent. And 8th grade, this is, I think what we have is all the different classes. So we have the signatures, and again, it's incredible. These signatures are not bleeding. They're really, really intact. We have the 8th grade class roll of 1939. Some of these are a little stuck together, but we're doing okay.
Mine is the members of the Board of Education, and there looks like there's about 6 signatures on here.
Okay, I already see some names that I still recognize in our committee. We have, let's see, oh my goodness, Stake, Eldred Stake, I think that was a name we mentioned earlier. Esme Hardman, Hauser, Belts, Spriggle, Stipe, Ross, McLean, Weimer, Salmon, another Reimer, Jack Dutton, Loretta Bridenthal. So we are going to leave some of these. So I encourage, and maybe the Historical Society can help us too. Yeah. But I don't know, folks, if we can get a view of this. The signatures are completely intact. It looks like there has been no water damage or anything. It's really kind of cool. So I am guessing that we have every class that was in the school in 1939 and the signatures. Like, I'm going to cry. This is so cool.
I think I have the teachers.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So, Alan Curtin, which is the superintendent. Yeah. I can't read that. Forrest Miller. What's that say?
Okay.
But the cool thing about this is that we have this old yearbook here
Yeah. So we'll be able
from 1939. So if we have the student roll list, we can look up some of the pictures and kind of put a face to the name.
This roll, again, looks like there's probably 12 or 13 papers.
Yeah.
Which, again, appears to be every class in that school signed this and put it in the time capsule.
That's amazing.
So we right here, it is awesome. You talk about the history of green. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to pass that.
I'll put
Right, yeah, set that over there.
The next one is the laying of the cornerstone for Greensburg High School, May 4th, 1939. Flag raising by Boy Scouts, all singing Star Spangled Banner, accompanied by the band. And then the invocation, the remarks, the proclamation, the laying of the cornerstone, and then the singing of the alma mater.
That's awesome.
So
and
it's
what
a
was the
little-
year on that?
1939, May 4th.
May 4th, 1939. So that was put together May 4th, 1939. That is awesome.
And it's typed too, it's not handwritten,
Mhm.
which is interesting.
Yeah, that's a good observation. All right, Rach, what you got in there?
Little book.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, so some of those guesses were right.
Yeah, so who guessed the book?
Oh my goodness.
The New Testament of the Bible.
Okay, so it's a small Bible that's in there.
Very small.
I heard someone at the booth today say, guess the Bible.
Oh, really?
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now we have a bunch of these little papers. So I'll take one out, or a handful, and give you guys some.
Okay, so I think what we have here, this looks to me to be a name card that you would put in a graduation announcement.
Okay.
So maybe they had graduation announcements then too, because this says Bill V. Moore, and I'm wondering if the senior class, the members of the senior class, put these in.
Yeah.
Is that what yours look like? Is that what you would guess?
Mine has Antonia Monstra.
Okay,
And mine has Miss Betty J. Bunting.
awesome. So is there
cool.
several of them in there?
Oh, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
them.
So I bet that's it. Because we had heard, a couple people told us that they believed every person in the senior class put something in there. So maybe it's their names preserved here in history for all these years. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
That's amazing. But I think, let me see if there's anything else. No, it's just a bunch more of these things.
more of the names.
And it's very dirty in here too. My gloves are already
Does it
getting-
look like it had been wet? It doesn't look like.
No?
No, just dirt, rust,
kind
all
of-
that
yeah.
stuff. So,
So again, I think what we'll do, and again, we'll have the Historical Society help us, is that make sure we get this newspaper laid out so everyone can see.
Yes.
But to me, one of the most incredible things is names. Now we have the names of kind of like our forefathers here from Green. And again, when the people see it, the names are absolutely perfect.
yeah.
Well, what do you think?
This
I think
is
it's awesome. I know, I
Really
was
cool.
excited. I
Very
gotta tell you, I was a
cool.
little nervous just a few
Me
minutes
too.
ago opening that up. So we're good. Girls, you did a great job.
Oh,
you
thank
excited?
you. Very excited.
You know what, and more than that, you know, of course I'm excited here, but I'm excited for some of our older citizens that are here with us today, and you know, sharing some of these names that they may recognize and see, and even family members. And I think we mentioned before this Letterman sweater that we have here from, they were champions in 1939, and that gentleman's granddaughter is one of our current kindergarten teachers.
Wow.
So tying in that history from that box to this sweater to our current school district, it's really just awesome. Girls, thank you so much.
thank
Rachel
you.
and Caroline, you did a great job, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for the opening of the Kleckner Time Capsule on GCTV. And a special thanks goes to the Celebration of Education Committee and our guests on the show today. None of this would be possible without you.
If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for an upcoming show, please contact Julie McMahan at mcmahonjulie@greenlocalschools.org. We would love to hear from you.
The Bulldog Beat hopes that we have succeeded our mission to intrigue you with the latest insight on our community news. The Bulldog Buzz is student filmed and edited and brought to you by the Bulldog Beat and Green Local Schools.
Thanks again for watching. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Caroline.
And as always,
Go Bulldogs!